So welcome again to Event Venue Sourcing in 2023, combining sustainability and ROI goals. My name is Mary Claire Lawson. I'll be your host as well as a panelist in today's discussion. Big thanks to Eventcombo for bringing us all together today to talk about what is top of mind for all of us right now, navigating the massive changes shaking up the industry this year. With so much at stake, every decision matters, from partnering with sustainable venues to rethinking physical swag to aligning experiences with values. We're going to jump into all of this, plus talk about all the value you can get by building out your venue platform online a little later. We have with us Victoria DeLuise, Director of Venue Sourcing at First. Also here with us today is Rachel McYo, Senior Project Manager at Rocketfish. And we are so lucky to have Crispin Molieri, Director of Conferences and Event Production at Horizon, joining us today. And myself, I'm Mary Claire Lawson. I'm a brand consultant and creative expert. To kick off the discussion, Victoria, can you give us a brief overview of the current state of event venue sourcing and what challenge is keeping you up at night?
Absolutely. So live events are definitely back in full swing. So lead times are much shorter than we've seen previously before COVID. And due to high demand, we're really having to cast a wider net than usual to get any suitable options for venues for clients. And this is especially challenging when clients have a specific need, like a sustainability-focused venue, which further limits the pool of acceptable options. So flexibility on dates and locations is truly key at the moment. As an organization, we're definitely seeing sustainability become more of a priority. We work with a lot of clients across different industries, and the one thing that we are seeing is that different industries are absolutely handling sustainability a little bit different, with some leading the curve and some a little bit further back. We've prioritized sustainability as a company, and at first we've spent 18 months on a special project that we've dubbed Paramount, which includes leaders from our business and brought a sustainability consultant on board to help us really develop a framework around a robust ESG program and complete with audits and strategy to really help us drive meaningful change in this space. We recently launched a two-part thought leadership piece on sustainability in events and experiences. And I wanted to chat through some of the stats as part of the state of the industry on this call. But no matter what size your event is, your attendees, who are either your customers or your employees or any variety of the two, maybe vendors or competitors, are really watching what you're doing and they have opinions. So according to recent surveys, 2 in 3 consumers say that environmental issues are very important to them, and 73% of exhibitors and visitors either agree or strongly agree that it's important for a trade show to display a strong commitment to sustainability. Customers want brands to be accountable for their impact, and the events and experiences ecosystem that we operate in is really no exception. 72% of CEOs believe that stakeholder scrutiny around ESG implementation will continue to accelerate, so conversations like the one that we're having today are really critical. Only 40% of event organizers that responded to a conference news survey said that sustainability plays a part in their supplier selection process, but 94% believe that sustainability will be a bigger part of the decision-making process in the next few years. So there's a definite disconnect with what we're currently doing and where we think we're going to be. But as I mentioned earlier, any sustainability goals should really be long-term and meaningful. And that can only be achieved when you put careful consideration and a strong strategy in place in advance.
What need do you see that leaders can do now to make the biggest impact? Like, what changes can they make?
Yeah, so I think it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be expensive. So just putting that kind of thought leadership into it and really putting the time into understanding what you're currently doing, where you want to go, and doing some benchmarking is really helpful. Partnering with suppliers that are passionate about sustainability and kind of auditing their claims around this is kind of the first and an easy step to, put the work onto someone else so that you can achieve a common goal and really look like a rock star. And it does take a little work to find vendors that are aligned on sustainability, but there are tons of independent properties, especially in the venue sourcing space, that are taking steps like using renewable energy, rooftop beehives, waste reduction. And then there are also larger brands that are taking giant steps toward really lofty goals. For example, I think Hilton as a brand is really leading the charge with their Light Stay program. They have a lot of managed hotels across the world, and these hotels can calculate your carbon emissions based on the specs of your event and the estimated energy usage, water consumption, waste output, and they've partnered with a company that can offset those carbon emissions for you. So, work smarter, not harder, everyone. And I could talk about this forever. So, Mary Claire, I'll let you move on to the next topic.
Thanks so much, Victoria. Okay, so now we're going to go on with you, Rachel. I'd love to find out. So you're meeting with a client and you want to build a solid, sustainable event with them. So tell me about your approach.
Yes, thank you, Mary Claire. Well, I think it's most important to clearly define what sustainability looks like to your client. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So obviously having those conversations beforehand and creating objectives flowing on from that. I think as well, it's important to ask the question, does this event need to be live completely, or can it be a mixture of hybrid or virtual as well? Going online and hybrid obviously clearly can reduce your carbon footprint, so it's important to have that discussion again before the event. If the event needs to be live or hybrid as well, then when sourcing a sustainable venue, most venues have their sustainability statement and policies kind of available online, but if not, you can definitely request this. At Rocketfish, we've been kind of collating these from hotels and storing it on our database so that we're not having to ask every single time. So it takes a while to build that up, but it definitely saves time in the end. And then obviously, if a venue's practices are in line with the client's desires, then yes, it will be suitable. But if not, we as event professionals should be always, pushing back and asking the question, are the venues able to accommodate this specific sustainable request? And usually venues are really happy to do this because it means they're improving things their side as well. So again, it's just worth having these conversations, from the start. And finally, I think focusing on the little things like Victoria touched on earlier, can we be reducing single-use plastic? For example, having no kind of branded giveaways with dates on, things that can be recycled and reused, using things like refillable water stations, for example, and putting the onus onto the venue. Most venues do this automatically, but if they're not, as event planners as well, it's really important that we're stressing the importance of this and having the conversations, kind of setting the expectations from the outset.
Yes, I agree. It's so important. And okay, so your venue is sourced, the budget is stretched, but it'd be great to keep the event momentum going. What comes next?
So I think again, it's talking to the client about how you can increase the longevity of an event. Can we use something like an online event platform, for example, to register people, build a hype, a buzz around the event pre-event? Also combine that with things like social walls, discussions, forums, and then it's also important to have those kind of follow-up sessions and feedback sessions post-event to kind of keep those conversations going. These event platforms can easily be reskinned and repurposed for your next event as well. So obviously it's making it quite a sustainable investment.
Aligning experiences with values. So what are your thoughts on integrating corporate social responsibility into the event?
I think it's really important, and I think companies seem to be, having these conversations and really thinking about this moving forward. I think, there's loads of kind of corporate social responsibility team building activities that you can include into any kind of conference or meeting. Thinking about how you can give back, partnering with a charity, for example, and there are loads of charities and loads of team building activities that are on the market, so it's definitely worth considering. I think it's also important to consider kind of making a green catering plan. So thinking about how we can reduce the amount of processed food, junk food, increasing veggie options, plant-based options, limiting the amount of food waste, and also sourcing from local suppliers as well. And again, speak to your suppliers, speak to your venues about that, because it is becoming more and more important. I think you can consider the use, carefully consider the use of technology. Again, we're going back to thinking about, can this be hybrid? Can we record this session? Are we streaming this? Are we broadcasting it to remote audiences? And I think finally, a really lovely initiative that we're now kind of offering to our clients as well is planting trees to offset carbon footprints. So as Victoria touched on, Hilton are kind of doing the same. You can easily do this using companies like moretrees.eco, but we as a company as well are doing this. So we're practicing what we're preaching, and I think again it's really important for us as event planners to kind of make sure that we're doing that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. A lot of great ideas in there. Okay, so Kristen, I'm hoping you can help everyone watching today who wants to know, what technology should they be using right now and why?
Sure.
How tech impacts your process and relationships?
Absolutely. So I think we are at a point where we are lucky, right? I recall starting off when, event sourcing technology maybe wasn't as great, and it was all manual. You were relying on search engines. You were relying on your own Google search and your own finds. You weren't expanding your criteria. You were relying on the internet. You were limiting what you could find. So if sustainability was extremely important, that wasn't something you could really automate and ask up front. Is your budget important? That wasn't something we could focus on prior. You were kind of just going out to what you could find online. And that alone is a very tedious process, because each email you were sending kind of changed your RFP, right? If you're going after a very expensive hotel, your RFP might change slightly. So being able to use one platform that does everything and stores everything was life-changing for an event person, right? So you have the time now to actually focus. So with using one platform, and I will use Cvent as an example. I rely on Cvent heavily. This gives me the ability to send out multiple RFPs at once. So instead of having to recreate, resend, tailor the same document, you're sending one RFP, you can clone it, you can export it. If you want to send it to your personal contacts and email for a special deal, you can do that all with one click of a button. But where things have changed for us ultimately is with this process, we can include more details and we can explain what we want. So for instance, there are comment boxes, there are specific special templates. You can change the template of the RFP you're sending. You can customize it towards that client or towards yourself if you're sourcing for your own company. Now, with that being said, I want sustainability, right? How does the venue support that? Put that back on the venue. So go out with the questions you're asking in addition to room rates, food and beverage minimums. What can you offer me with sustainability? What do you do? What initiatives do you take? One big thing for my company is digital branding. How do we remove all of these printouts? I mean, at one point in time, we were offering seat drops, which is basically a piece of literature. If you have 1,000 attendees and you're giving 25 seat drops to sponsors, It's 25,000 pieces of paper. You're likely throwing out more than half. So how do you change that? So hotels and venues that offer digital branding, you can now remove that piece of paper, offer that digitally, run videos on a loop in the hotel lobby. How do you promote yourself without contributing to all of that waste? So we're able to specify that in the beginning, and your budget, right? We all need a return on our investment. How do we maximize that experience while using the technology to help us? I'm very honest when doing my sourcing. I will give you my budget. This is my range on my hotel room night costs. This is my range on food and beverage. I'm not flexible. This is a range, and that's why you have that, right? So I am essentially saving myself time. I'm saving my vendors time, and I am helping the relationship there. I'm not just giving them business that they will bid on, take the time to fill out an RFP and have no return for them. You're damaging relationships that way as well. So it's great to be able to utilize technology, and then just alone, it decreases the amount of site visits you need. Event sourcing technology allows you the ability to see 3D floor plans or live site visits. So if you're traveling for an event, you don't actually have to go do the site. You can do this right on your computer, okay? And a lot of times it is a separate person planning the event than the person sourcing. That would include an additional site visit. That cuts that out right there as well. And down to diagramming and saving yourself with the amount of money you're exposing yourself to. If I am laying out a diagram, which now event technology allows you to do, you can download that exact venue's floor plan and lay out your ideal diagram there. Maybe I would have been in a traditional old sourcing way, have written out on a piece of paper, I need 4 rooms at 4,000 square feet each. But now that I'm able to see their largest ballroom, I can get away with 1 room. That's 1 rental as opposed to 4. So that's saving you money on your investment right there. And additionally, this helps you in your future. Okay, so not only can you digitally send RFPs, but you can track responses digitally. So you are saving yourself time, you are saving your client time. You can shortlist, right? You can say, okay, I've had 100, so that would be ideal if we got 100 responses back, right? But say you have 100 responses, you need to pick your top 5 or 6. Export your data. It is a very easy way to look side by side. You're saving yourself hours, days of time doing that comparison. So it's a very easy way to export the data, provide it to stakeholders, and just do an analysis yourself. These things weren't easy to pick out. So imagine you're looking at 50 papers in front of you with proposals. Things might not jump at you as easy as they will digitally when it's side by side and you're able to see that clearly. So that definitely helps. And also you can save proposals from the past. If this is an annual event, you can flag that proposal from the year before. Use that again next year. Use that as your bargaining. Use that to negotiate. Well, you gave me a $200 rate last year, now you want $400. Why is that increasing that high on the same day and pattern? So it gives you a leg to stand on there. And overall, technology really, it enhances your relationships with your vendors. It cuts down on the back and forth communication, helps you find a better fit that matches the client's goal or your goal, whether that be sustainability, whether that be return on investment, whether that be branding, whatever the case is, we are able to kind of dive in right from the beginning now.
So much good stuff in there. And I see, Victoria, you are nodding practically the whole time.
Definitely, yes.
So I see you agree on the use of technology there, and build that community before your event happens, so that your attendees are not walking into that event, be it online or virtual, hybrid, in person, what have you. They're not coming to that event cold, anxious, not knowing what to expect or who's going to be there. They already have their community. They already have people that they know. And that in itself builds a social currency for your brand, for your partnerships, for the longevity of your event. And it becomes easier to serialize what you're doing. So, for example, Barnes & Noble, they used TikTok to create, I don't know if you all heard of this, but they made a book talk. So they were going to have like a conference event at the physical store with speakers, and they tapped into the TikTok audience that is primarily online, loving these authors, socialized it. A lot of these people never met each other in real life, bought tickets for the event in person at the store. The event sold out. So it's using the social, using the online community to build the relationships, build the excitement, and translating it to a real in-person event. And it's like thinking outside the box on this type of stuff.
I think kind of bringing people along for the ride and communicating what your goals are is super important. You know, one of the things with sustainability is trying to reduce waste. And, you know, we all love these big, beautiful buffets with overflowing food and really full buffets and tons of protein options. But that's really not a good sustainability option, because once that food comes out, in most cases, it then can't be donated. So, you know, you have to bring attendees along for the ride and let them know what you're doing. Put it in your pre-event comms. While, you know, there might not be a salad that's this big on the table, we have plenty of food. We'll refill it as needed. We're trying to reduce waste. Anything that doesn't get used will definitely be donated afterward, or maybe limiting the proteins. You know, red meat is the absolute worst in terms of sustainability, with the amount of energy it takes to raise a cow, grow a cow, feed a cow, all the waste that comes with that. So maybe having more vegetarian heavy options. But if you don't communicate these things in advance and really create a community and make it a community effort to really try to improve what you're doing, your footprint, people just think you're cheap. So you need to make it very, very deliberate and really communicate that to people.
I'd love to piggyback off that, just down to how technology helps you with that exact point, down to food and beverage, right? Which Victoria is saying, it is the biggest waste on site. If you can change your buffets to your plated, you also, in that technology realm when you're sourcing, can ask, are any of these hotels actually approved to donate food? Is your caterer, if you're at a venue specific event, is that caterer approved to donate food if it's plated? And where? You can tie that mission back to your event. I had an event in October where I hired a caterer who was able to donate back to the local women's shelter. Well, this was an event honoring women. So how do you tie back that this is an event honoring women and benefiting women even past the event? So you can tie that back in just by using the technology when sourcing as well.
Like I mentioned, communication is definitely key. I was recently at a conference and speaking with an industry colleague, and she had a Scandinavian group. Scandinavia is really, really great and doing great things with sustainability and really conscious of it in their everyday life. So of course it kind of trails through into their business world as well. And she was saying that this group only wanted to be within close driving distance of all the attendees. They didn't want to fly anywhere. They wanted a carpool or, take public transportation. And I think that's a huge consideration for any event. So kind of step one, where are these people coming from? A huge move that you can make is to make sure that your venue is accessible to public transportation. Certain cities don't really have that option, but in cities that do have that option, that's a really great step to take, and really just make sure that you're catering to all those people. And if 90% of your people are in London, maybe you don't have to fly them to New York. Maybe you fly that smaller group out to London to really kind of minimize the amount of travel and, all of the carbon that you're going to be pulling into the universe or into the atmosphere. And then also just finding out what your goals are. So communicate with all of the venues what you're looking for from them, and then what you're expecting. So, as Kristen mentioned, being really upfront in that RFP process and, finding out what the venues do. And then also I think it's important to talk to clients, because not every venue has these things in place, but you can still do amazing things. You can buy carbon credits for, a wind farm in China, even if your event is in New York, still the same atmosphere. It all has the same impact. It doesn't have to be right in their backyard that you're doing it. But I think just understanding if the client does have, or if the group does have any additional budget to really help offset these things, I think that's a really good place to start as well.
So a lot of things that help with the pricing is upfront when you are contracting. You can always try to negotiate a 10%, 5%, any type of discount off of menu pricing will help you upfront. And then in order to help with sustainability, I think we've touched on this a couple of times, is having ceramic plates or eco-friendly napkins, cutlery, straws, whatever, cups, drinkware, all of that helps. And then just from a budget standpoint, it helps. And I know this kind of goes against it, but test your budget. Is the buffet cheaper for you than the plated? Is the plated cheaper for you than the buffet? What is more important to you? Because sometimes you can't have both sustainability and your return on investment. So if you have to choose between the two, is it more important for you to stay in line with your budget, or is it more important for you to have sustainability with this specific option with food and beverage? In some cases, your a la carte is your easiest way. Do your breaks. If you're just doing a package, you're paying for each person on that package. If you're doing a la carte, you can have on consumption. So if you order 200 kind bars, your audience is only consuming 100. You're only getting charged for that 100 instead of your 200 that you included as your count. So those are just some tips and tricks that have helped as far as keeping your budget down and keeping sustainability in mind.
Venue marketplaces are when it comes to making a decision. Is there any concern or biases that we need to be alert of?
When they talk about venue marketplace, I think they're probably talking about like a Cvent type platform. And, I think it comes down to asking the right questions and then auditing those claims. There's so much greenwashing that's going on, and, people are kind of enhancing what their capabilities are, or maybe, embellishing on what the things they've done are. And you really want to audit those claims to make sure that they're actually doing what they said. Because if you're publicizing how great this venue is and how they use renewable energy, and then you get caught out, or the venue gets caught that they're not actually using that, it looks bad on you as the event host or the organizer. So you definitely want to audit people's claims and not take everything at face value, and make sure that you're getting documentation to kind of back up anything that people are asking.
Though sustainability is on every event planner's mind, how are the venue sources hospitality industry preparing for the same?
Yeah, I can take that one, Mary Claire. I think most, in every company, it's really important. I think most people are considering how they are working sustainably. They are putting kind of green policies and practices into place. So again, as we were saying at the top of this conversation, it's important to put some of the onus back onto them. And again, just having these conversations early doors, like I said before, it really helps if the client has some ideas, if you have some ideas, and you're putting that to the venue, making sure that they are sourcing from local suppliers, they are employing, local people, giving back to the community. Most venues are involved in some kind of charity in some way as well. So is there any opportunity for your event to link to that charity, or your chosen charity from the client side? How can that link to the venue, for example, or like you said, Victoria, giving back to the women that in the shelter that was that was sort of important, and that in that particular case. So again, it's just worth always having those conversations and making sure you're getting people's buy-in. I always think as well, just meeting venues face to face, so going for a site visit, creating those relationships, and then there is more opportunity for negotiation. They know your face, and you can personally sort of get on with those people and make sure that they're buying into your ideas, buying into the client's ideas. If you have lead time, of course, which we never get in these in this industry, but the sooner we can have the conversations, the better.
Sustainable practices are highly priced. What is the reality behind sustainable venues being cost neutral?
I can be part of that. I don't necessarily agree with that they're any higher price than other venues. I think it's a personal project or a brand project that a lot of places are taking on right now. And, there are some cases where it's going to cost you more money. So there's a convention center in Canada that I was chatting about with our sustainability expert.
Okay, so another question came in. If the venue is not accredited already, what are the key sustainable practices requirements that must be included in the RFPs sent to vendors?
So, I kind of think that this is sustainability within venues and hotels is a newer initiative. So again, I think that specifying what is important to you from the beginning is the biggest thing that you can do. The hotel, not always do they think that that's going to sell you. So they might not even be pitching this to you. So if you're telling them that this is important to me in your RFP process, it doesn't have to be a specific or templated version. What means to me, what sustainability means to me, maybe Victoria or Rachel or Mary Claire. So there isn't a one size fits all. So I think it's more about being upfront and honest with what is most important to you.
How are the authorities working to make a strong compliance system for sustainable venues?
So there's LEED certification, which comes into play with green buildings and the actual structure. So it takes into account the water, the waste, the energy, and a couple of other factors. I'm definitely not an expert, but there are different levels that a venue could achieve. And I think that's a great starting point to know that it's something that a venue really values and has put some time into. I know the certification takes some time to get. So there's 3 different levels. If a venue is platinum, I think that's really excellent. And that is definitely a venue that values sustainability. So you can find out a little bit more about what they're doing. But short of that, I think it's just asking the question and having the conversation and just being really honest with communication throughout the process and, asking them to call you out if something that you're asking for may not be the most sustainable option. Ask the venue to call you out on that and say, what are you doing that's better? What have you seen that's better? And really start to understand how you can improve and really start to benchmark what you're doing event over event. So there's tons of calculators online that you can calculate your carbon and that you can calculate any of the sustainability efforts that you're taking. Do that for one of your events and then do it for the next one and try to beat it. So see if there's any way that you can reduce any of the stuff that you did and really just make yourself better every single event and challenge yourself. And your attendees will start to catch on if it's the same ones kind of event over event and really start to understand what you're doing. And you can talk about those accomplishments because it's huge. And, based on the stats, it's something that's important to people personally. I think, most people recycle at home now. People are composting more now, so it's not this crazy foreign concept like it was, 10 years ago. It's really something that's become much more prevalent in our lives personally. So it should be, something that's more prevalent in the business events that we attend also.
Okay, here's another question. Can you share some tips for event site inspection? What should be the skills of a good site inspector?
I can take that one. So I think it's always worth, pre-planning your questions that you want to take along with the venue. Again, going back to my point right at the start, defining those objectives that your client wants to meet and how you're going to achieve those. So obviously, preparing for your site visit in advance is always helpful. And obviously when you're meeting with, the sales manager, from the venue. Also see if you can meet with the chef, for example. See if you can have those conversations when you're on site. Is your food sustainably sourced? What happens to the waste? Asking those questions, because sometimes the sales manager or the account manager, they're in the office, they might not see what happens day to day. So meet when you're down there. Obviously, it's a good opportunity for you to meet with as many people from the hotel as possible and kind of get their buy-in as well. I think also it's important to take clients along with you, again, to have those conversations. Then you can see their immediate kind of feedback as well. You can have multiple kind of conversations with them to see how they're feeling about the space. Is the space going to work for them? Can we be flexible? Can we move this around? Exploring everything that you can on that site visit. And then hopefully the venue will be, flexible, they'll be accommodating, and help, improve their services overall and make sure that your client's having the best and smoothest event that they can possibly have.
What are the compulsory protocols to confirm while sourcing venues in terms of space, acoustic, hospitality, teams, etc., if the venue is hosting more than one event at the same time?
So it's tricky, right? You are kind of, as far as acoustics, I've experienced this, where you are in a quieter session next door. Maybe you share an air wall with the group who is having a reception at this point in time. Transparently, to be completely honest, unless they have taken initiatives to build out special soundproof or tighter air walls, there isn't always something you can do to prepare for that. Aside, make sure you introduce yourself to the other planner on site, okay? Make your presence known. Share the times for you that are important to be quiet. See if there's any overlap there where they might have a session to be loud. Is there anything you guys can do to help each other? But work within your community. I don't think that there's a way to really plan for the sound, right? But as far as staggering your load-ins, that's huge. Okay, so if there's only one load-in dock, but there's two groups loading into separate space, again, work with your hotel, ask them, when are they loading in? What is my designated time? What is your plan if that one loading freight elevator breaks? What's the plan for the rest for both of us? So really kind of put that back on your hotel and take on that responsibility as far as, I will communicate with that other client. I will introduce myself. I will sit down and have that conversation. So it kind of is a balance between what you'll take on and what the hotel can take on as well.
So before we wrap up today, I would love everyone out there to identify 1 to 3 things they will do this year to make their events more sustainable. I'm talking about your events that are already on the calendar. Could be your next big win. Victoria DeLuise, Rachel McYo, and Kristen Molieri, thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge with our audience. It was indeed enlightening, and I hope our audience found this discussion to be informative and inspiring. I can't believe all of the amazing insights you all shared. This was so awesome. I loved it. Thank you. And many thanks to our amazing audience and Eventcombo. And this concludes our event on event venue sourcing in 2023. I hope everyone out there has a year of great events, sustainable
and great return on your ROI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.